bit. You told me something the other day about sales of underwear that I found very interesting.
No,
I think this audience would love it.
I use it as a conversation starter every place. Yeah. Some years ago, my partner Charlie Munger, 6 years older than I, said, you know, Warren, he said, we got to start getting into women's underwear. It was now or never, you know. So we bought Fruit of the Loom. I mean, it was the only, only alternative we had. And
$100 billion is a lot of money.
I used to think so.
Mr. Buffett, Mr. Gates, my name is Antoinette Genovese. I'm a first-year executive MBA student, and I actually work at Goldman Sachs. So thank you for your investment.
Why aren't you at work?
Is because we started it 50 years ago and we kept doing it, and it worked very well, what we were doing together. And I hope it works further for some extended period of time. After all, I wouldn't want to lose Warren.
Well, actually, Joe, I thought instead, you know, you've always wanted a share of NetJets. I've got a NetJets tie here, and instead of giving you an 8, I'm going to take this. There's dozens of planes on this, and I'm going to give this to Becky to take back to you.
Wow.
You are now a major net. I mean,
here we go, Joe.
Yeah, exactly.
Here we are.
Thousands of jets, and I'm getting a tie. All right.
Dozens of planes.
Right.
Dozens of planes on it.
Warren, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you.
We appreciate it,
Thank you.
Well, when you found Ben Graham, he was unconventional, and he was very smart. And, of course, that was very attractive to you. And then when you found out it worked and you could make a lot of money while sitting on your ass, of course, you were an instant convert. And so...
It still appeals to me, actually.
Yeah.
I mean...
But if you ever wondered what the billionaire next door keeps in his wallet, well, now's the time to ask.
I won't show you everything. I guess I've got about maybe $600 in here. Here's a $50 bill from a bank we owned in Rockford, Illinois, and if you look at it, down at the bottom, it's signed by the fellow who ran the bank for me. They issued their own currency, so I carry that around for good luck. And here we have my McDonald's card, which lets me eat free at any McDonald's in Omaha for the rest of my life. So that's why the Buffett family has Christmas dinner at McDonald's. That explains a lot of things.
Does anybody else have one of those cards?
There's just a few of them. Bill Gates has one. His is good throughout the world, I guess. Mine is only good in Omaha, but I never leave Omaha, so mine's just as good as his is.
Who doesn't have one?
Well, I think President Clinton wanted one very badly, but I don't think he has one. I think he has to go to McDonald's with me. Here's one from Johnny Rockets, which is a place I like very much. I like the milkshakes there, and I like the music there. And this lets me take 3 guests with me, actually. So play up to me, and maybe someday you'll get to go to Johnny Rockets with me. And let's see what else we have. Got a few credit cards. And really, there's not a whole lot more here. There's a driver's license, and as you can see, the billfold is about 30 years old. It's only been out a few times during that period. Often moths come out when I pull out my billfold.
One of my favorite lines from you is you want to hire the guy with the IQ of 130 that thinks it's 120, and the guy with an IQ of 150 who thinks it's 170 will just kill you.
You must be thinking about Elon Musk.
You have gotten into the tech world with buying Apple. You have Mr. Gates there. I'm just wondering why you've never bought Microsoft.
Well, in the earlier years, it's very clear. The answer is stupidity. But
Well, it's part of theology that a late conversion is better than never. And you've greatly improved yourself. But I would never be as good as he was. And everywhere I looked, there was somebody like that. And there was all this folly out there, and I suddenly realized, if I just avoid all the folly, maybe I can get an advantage without having to be really good at anything. And I kept doing that all my life, and it worked so well.
When I was at the University of Nebraska, one day I was reading the Daily Nebraskan, and it said in room 300 or something, at 3 o'clock there will be this panel of 3 professors here at the university, and they're going to award the Nathan Gold Scholarship. I don't know whether do you still have that around? And at the time, it said it would give you $500 to go to the graduate school of your choice. I don't know whether it's changed in amount, but that was it. So I read this, and I went there to this room at 3 o'clock that day, or whatever it was, and I walked in the room, and there were the professors, and I was the only student that showed up. I mean, it really got to them. I mean, they were stuck. They kept waiting and looking at their watch and hoping there'd be more candidates, but no one came in. So I won $500 by default. And those are usually my biggest triumphs when nobody else shows up.
Can you do any better on salary?
Unfortunately, that range is set at corporate.
What about mileage when I use my car? I mean, gas ain't cheap,
We think that 25 cents a mile is pretty generous.
How about 27? And when I make long-distance calls, will they be monitored, or is it on the honor system?
Of course, I actually plan to keep managing Berkshire after I die. You have to understand that. I have given all the managers Ouija boards, and I've got these dark rooms they're going to go into, and I'll be there. Mrs. B at the Nebraska Furniture Mart worked till 103 at Berkshire, and she's sort of our examples. And then she took off from work, and she died the next year. So it's very dangerous to quit as early as that.
There are a lot of rich people out there, Mr. Buffett, who have the will, who have the intent to give money.
Right.
But somewhere they fall short of taking the final plunge. What would be your message to them?
Well, my message to them, if they found some way to take it with them, I wish they'd tell me the secret. But
generally speaking, when you get multicultural, you can also be multidisciplinary. But generally, I think people make more money if they're very narrowly specialized, like the proctologist, and that it's much harder to make a lot of money for most people if you try and imitate Warren and me.
I'm glad I didn't meet him earlier. I mean,
what do you think about Tesla?
Its founder is bold and brilliant and swings for the fences. And of course, people like that get some remarkable results, and sometimes they get some quick failure. And I haven't the faintest idea how Elon Musk is going to turn out, but I think he's got a considerable chance of success and a considerable chance of failure. He seems to like it that way. Elon says a conventional moat is quaint, and that's true of a puddle of water. And he says that the best moat would be to have a big competitive position, and that is also right. It's ridiculous. Warren does not intend to build an actual moat. Even though they're quaint.
Yeah. That does not mean we approve of every buyback at all, though. I mean, we've seen...
No. Yeah. I think some people just buy it to keep the stock up. And that, of course, is insane and immoral. But apart from that, it's fine. A lot of social scientists have a weird mania where they twist everything into whatever little concept they started with. Again, it's that old saying, to a man with a hammer, every problem looks pretty much like a nail. And the corporate acquisition game now is so driven by the leveraged buyout and the so-called, what do they call them? Strategic, yes, strategic. I usually translate that into barnyard language. And
have we ever made a deal that we would have regarded as strategic?
We've never had a strategic plan unless you've hidden it from me.
Warren has come out with his news about the prostate cancer. What was your reaction?
Well, I regard it as a total non-event. I would bet a lot of money that I have more than he does.
Do you think that Donald Trump is a good businessman? Because you certainly went after him on his business record.
He had some major failures, and he was very good at licensing, and he was very good at things that involved promotion of his name. Actual operation of the businesses in the 1980s and 1990s, it left him essentially bankrupting multiple companies. But I would say he understands business, but his record has been better at licensing and than
operations.
Putting out his own capital. Yeah.
Are you concerned about his ability to operate big businesses?
Well, he isn't going to be operating a business. I don't have to worry about him running a business at all. He's the one that has to, that doesn't really, in my judgment, determine whether somebody makes a great president. Harry Truman went broke in a haberdashery store, near Kansas City or in Kansas City. I mean, he wasn't much of a businessman. He turned out to be a terrific president.
Part of the Berkshire secret is that when there's nothing to do, Warren is very good at doing nothing.
Understands. It will come to a bad ending. Charlie?
Well, I like cryptocurrencies a lot less than you do. And so, to me, it's just dementia. And I think the people who are professional traders that go into trading cryptocurrencies, it's just disgusting. It's like somebody else is trading turds and you decide I can't be left out.
To the extent that we're being webcast around the world, I hope some of our stuff doesn't translate very well, actually.
I think gold is a great thing to sew into your garments if you're a Jewish family in Vienna in 1939, but I think civilized people don't buy gold. They invest in productive businesses.
My dad was a Republican congressman, and he thought if the Democrats won that there would never be another election. I mean, all my life I've heard all these terrible things are going to happen.
If you went back far enough, you would find a lot of sin. My favorite saying was about Jay Gould and Russell Sage. And you remember that era, and they said of those two in Congress, when they're talking, they're lying, and when they're quiet, they're...
I appreciate that. When you get to be 87, people stand and applaud at the start because they're not sure whether you're going to be around at the end.
And so the top 5, AIDS, TB, malaria, and those 2 childhood causes, we're making great progress there. The other 15, like visceral leishmaniasis, are less known because they're only in the tropical areas.
Yes.
But
he's going to be my family doctor, Charlie. I can see that. I mean, this guy is. He's got it. Yeah, I want him in the operating room.
Have you considered overnight Elon Musk getting into the candy business as he suggested he might do on Twitter?
I didn't hear that. It sounds like wiseassery. I can't criticize anybody else for wiseassery.
Is related to the precision acquisition. So whatever you see, you can add about 400 million. That, in my view, is not an economic expense, but the accountants would argue otherwise. But it's our money, so we'll take my view.
I'm researching what makes partnerships successful, such as you and Warren. And in particular, I'm researching personality psychology. I was wondering what your thoughts are on that, if you have any. Thank you.
Well, yes, I'll tell you what makes a partnership successful. 2 talented people working well together. Of course, that works better.
I'm Warren. He's Charlie. Charlie does most things better than I do, but Well, this one's a little tough. Charlie, maybe you can chew on that a while. Okay.
One of your other board members, Bill Gates, he's blogging now. Did you see he's got a blog out there, Gates Notes? You know, you always say that you're a...
I've taught that guy everything he knows about computers and all that. I'm glad he's finally picked up on it. Miss a lot of things. Charlie?
Yeah, we have a wonderful system. If one of us is stupid in some area, so is the other. Years ago, one of our local investment counseling shops, a very big one, they were looking for a way to get an advantage over other investment counseling shops. And they reasoned as follows. We've got all these brilliant young people from Wharton and Harvard and so forth, and they work so hard trying to understand business and market trends and everything else. And if we just ask each one of our most brilliant men for their single best idea, then created a formula with this collection of best ideas, we would outperform averages by a big amount. And that seemed plausible to them because they were ill-educated. That's what happens when you go to Harvard and Wharton. And so they tried it out, and of course it failed utterly. So they tried it again, and it failed utterly, and they tried it a third time, and it also failed. Now, at a place like Berkshire Hathaway, we've done better than average. Why has that happened? And the answer is pretty simple. We tried to do less. We never had the illusion we could just hire a bunch of bright young people and they would know more than anybody about canned soup and aerospace and utilities and so on and so on and so on. We never had that dream. We never thought we could get really useful information on all subjects, like Jen Kramer tends to have. And
the stocks aren't as cheap as they've been most of the time. Yeah, it was shooting fish in a barrel in late 2008 and 2009, and stocks have been steadily going up, pretty steadily going up now for, well, March of 2009 was the low, early in March. So it's 8+ years. Stocks aren't going to earn much more. They're not going to earn more just because you pay more for them.
I always liked the story of P.J. O'Rourke, who said, you know, he says, the last communist dictator of Albania was a pure communist. And he finally threw out the Russian embassy because they'd lost the pure faith. And then he kicked out the Chinese communists because they'd lost the pure faith. And he said finally he was only comfortable with two places in the world. One was the communist dictator of North Korea, and the other was the English department at Yale. Well, you think I'm kidding, but there is a lot of extreme craziness in some of the liberal arts, and they select people who share their craziness.
I would love to be a baby being born in the United States today. Charlie, okay, Charlie, you give the other side of this.
Well, there's a tendency to think that our present politicians are much worse than any we had in the past, but we tend to forget how awful our politicians were in the past. I can remember a prominent senator arguing with an absolute earnestness that mediocre people ought to have more representation on the United States Supreme Court.
Yeah, he came from Nebraska, incidentally.
He came from Nebraska.
We have over 150,000 people now working for Berkshire Hathaway in dozens of companies throughout this country primarily, and even abroad a little bit. We have exactly 15.8 people in headquarters, and Deb Ray came down with me today, so we've only got 13.8 there today, and we're probably working just as well with those 13.8 as we would if Deb and I were in the office. But
and I have disciplined myself, and I now regard all politicians higher than I used to. I did that as a matter of self-preservation. The other thing I did to make me feel better about the current scene is I reread The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire. And it goes on for a great many hundreds of pages. And that made me feel a lot better about the current political scene.
That's a pretty low bar.
Well, it's very helpful. I suggest you try it. You will feel better about the present world, if you look at that one. My friend Garrett Hardin, wonderful man, another Caltech trained man, he used to say, if Aristotle were alive, he would be a very grumpy old man. Because he would have seen the same damn mistakes made over and over and over again. And that may be some of the problem with me. And in terms of humility, I've frequently said that when they passed that out, I didn't get my full share. And that was a serious problem when I was young. And I only cured it partly by becoming very rich. And generous. It takes both to overcome a defect like that. So the young people in the room, don't copy this if you're not willing to pay the price. Remember the old saying, this too will pass? They all go away. I have a different rule about politicians. They are never so bad you don't live to want them back. There will come a time when those people who hate Trump will wish that he were back. I don't think I'll live to see it, but I confidently predict it will happen.
He would come to board meetings and bring with him 20 annual reports. And he would take me through these annual reports, saying, this is a good business, this is a cash-intensive business, this is a utility, this is why you should be interested in this. And I mean, it was like going to business school with him, and it was really wonderful because he was such a good teacher. Finally, he sent me the back of a Disney annual report, and there was a kid on it in a stroller, and he was like that. And he said, this is you after the 20th annual report. He had the patience to do this. I mean, not many people would have. They would have just taken one look at this idiot and gone the other way, but it really saved my life. 2 of the biggest investors sold their stock. And Warren told me, they were friends of his, and he said that they were going to sell. And this, I mean, I have to confess to you, and I know that nobody will tell anybody, that I thought it was the end, that I'd messed it up, and I burst into tears. You're not supposed to do that, but I did. And so we were talking many years afterwards about, and he said, don't be silly, Wall Street has never really appreciates valuable stocks until they get up, and then it's too late. But that's Wall Street, and you don't let it upset you. And I did. So anyway, we were recalling this incident many years later, and he said, well, just buy in their stock. And so we bought in stock, which nobody was doing then. They did it later, but and we bought in the stock. And he said, well, we made about $300 million off that. And he said, next time you burst into tears, call me first.